So the Boaton Mountain Festival Section 3 we'll look at here. So again, we have looked at the fact it's an LTD, and we know that that means they can sell shares to raise finance. Selling shares is a source of finance, but you only sell when you're an LTD to usually just friends and family, but anybody that you agree to sell a share to. So it don't have to be a relative or a friend. It just means that they're not available in the open market. They've been established by a group of outdoor enthusiasts, so they've got the skills there because it's the people who set it up are enthusiastic and keen, and the initial investment. So they all put 20 years ago, all put in £5,000 of share, or they bought 5% of share capital. So depending on how many people are in the group, you don't know, would tell us how much they invested initially. Now, the key thing is there's been share growth. So what that means is, let's say Boaton Mountain Festival as an entity, as a business, it's cut up into all the shares that they sold. Each one initially was worth £5,000. So if you had one, you might have a share that was worth £5,000, or if they split it down, it could be 500 or 100 quid per share, but they all put in £5,000. Whatever the value of that share was, whatever the value of share was at year one, because they've done well as a festival, the value of that share has gone up. Right? So, for example, if you bought a share for 100 quid, they're now saying, just an example, it might be 200 quid. And that's a good thing for you because you bought a share for 100, you can now, if you want, you can sell it for 200. So you've made a certain percentage there. So the value of the share. So that's the first thing, the value of the share can go up. The second reason why that you have a share as a shareholder is dividend. So the actual share itself can go up, but if the business makes a profit, then every shareholder gets a payment, and that payment is called dividend. Now that's a percentage, and it's worked out in relation to how much profit a company's got. So the better you do, the more dividend you get paid. If you don't if the business is not doing well, you don't get a dividend payment from your share. So it says here that some shareholders are not pleased with performance. Well, we know the share has gone up, so I'm assuming that they're not. That the reason they're not pleased, it can't be because the share price has stayed the same, because we know it hasn't. So the issue that they've probably got is that these shareholders feel they should be getting more dividend. They should be getting more payments because when the company does well. So what you can then bring in as well, and this is the second time that this topic's come up, is that there is clear stakeholder conflict. Stakeholder conflict here between the shareholder versus management, because management would decide on the amount that is paid out in dividend. Right? So we've already got the local community versus the police, etc. when we look over here. So local residents, customers and police to do with the drinking. So that's a conflict that you could mention. And then we've got this conflict between shareholder and management that is an issue as well. So stakeholder conflict, is something that can clearly come up. And you need to be able to mention two sides, what they're fighting about and why. So that's quite a big thing. So, next thing here, I think it's even during cuts, it's very relevant that they've got £30,000, and now as a grant. Now, with a grant, you don't pay back, right? So it's effectively free money, but for that money, you have to meet certain criteria. Now for this festival it will be to do with ethics, it will be to do with being green, it might be to do with something to do with increasing local job opportunities, bringing tourists to the area. So you only get this money, the council are only investing 30 grand because they think it's going to benefit Bowton. If they find, when they analyse it after the festival, that 30 grand investment by the council hasn't produced good stuff for Bowton, we know Bowton needs it because it's got low wages and high unemployment. If it hasn't done that, then you'll find that 30 grand going forward isn't available. They've only given it due to the fact that they want it to help the local area, hotels, restaurants, etc., etc. Next thing we've got is this sponsorship. The reason that they can drum up so much sponsorship is because of the visitor numbers. If demand is high from visitors, 10,000 people coming, then it is worth people sponsoring the event because the advert is seen by the right target audience, the target group. Obviously, manufacturers of outdoor equipment will sponsor an event because the people turning up are interested in that type of kit. So that's a really good, again, source of finance and something they should probably try and increase. They should probably try year on year to get more sponsorship and talk about ways that sponsorship could improve, maybe having branded T-shirts with the sponsors on rather than just the festival itself. So getting those sponsors more visible and therefore they'll pay more to be there. So then we look at this next bit, sort of the £60, that's for the day pass. So if we're going to work out revenue, you need to know how much it's going to cost, selling price, and you need to times it by numbers sold. Now we don't know the numbers sold or the predictions for numbers sold. We've got, this is in this year, 2017, we know it's going to be 60 quid. We know the numbers from last year, 10,000. So we can sort of work out a rough revenue, but it's not accurate because we're using figures from different years, the 017 and the 016. But we could do that. Obviously, that then produces a figure of that much for revenue. Now, we know that tickets are sold for individual events. The key thing is to make sure you can predict your revenue. You want to be selling more of the 60 quid tickets. If you're just going to price things individually, a demand-based pricing system, at the moment they can probably use things like premium pricing because of the fact it's got an ethical approach to festival setup. If you're ethical, if you're green, you can charge more, so you can go for that premium pricing. You wouldn't need to go for discount, and you wouldn't necessarily go for cost plus pricing because it's very difficult to work out which costs are split, how the costs are split up across the ticket price. So you'd probably go for a high-end price. You wouldn't want to sell as many of these individual tickets because it's difficult for planning purposes. So in terms of total revenue, though, remember you've got the T-shirts as well. So that comes in, I think, at an extra 80 grand. So remember, total revenue is around that, but it's a very dodgy total revenue figure. You might end up having to think about break even, where your total revenue hopefully is higher than your total costs, and then your break even point is in here, and then you'd need to sell more tickets. So that is how many tickets you'd need to break even. You'd want to sell more somewhere up here, so your margin of safety is quite high. And we'll be selling more tickets than the break-even point, otherwise you're just not going to make a profit. Remember, profit is this part, a loss is this part. That's your fixed costs. Output and costs / revenue. So this bit's quite a short one, so I'll now go on to sort of questions that you could pick up. Questions being, what I would look at is, why has the council decided to offer grant money during a period of austerity? So why has the council decided to offer a £30,000 grant during a period of austerity? Now remember, austerity is a period when cuts have been made by central government. So the local council has less money. So now it's got less money. Why is it handing out effectively free money? That's you need to answer that, and I've discussed that a little bit anyway. And question 2, so a little pause. Why is it better for Boat and Mountain Festival to sell weekend passes instead of individual event tickets? And the reason I want you to, the main focus of your answer there is I want you to focus on planning and budgeting. Why is it better to sell these block 60 quid passes rather than things on the day? Think about also payments that the festival has to make before it opens its doors on day one, and how selling 60 quid passes would be better than selling things on the day. So there are your two questions. Slightly shorter section, and then we'll go into section 4 in a second.